The Gold family residence is a huge mansion with a beautiful garden. Suddenly, there is a loud slap, followed by a ringing squeal. An impudent boy indulging in lifting up the skirts of his maids. The young maids are very embarrassed and ask the young master to stop bullying. The boy laughs and complacently says that some servant has no right to tell him what to do. The little mischief maker's name is Hawk, and he is the only son of the Gold merchant family. The impudent man declares to the maids that their value is not a sharp mind and high intelligence, and demands to be allowed to feel the charms of young girls. The maids stand there in disbelief, not knowing how to answer him as the boy continues to insist. Finally, the girls give up under the pressure of their master and indulge his demand. Summer is in full swing. The hot concrete of high-rise buildings looks completely white against the blue sky. It's already noon during the lunch break, and one of the office clerks is in a bad mood. He sprawled on the bench and stared up at the sky with tired eyes. Frowning and tired, he hears a woman's chatter not far from him. During a break from work, women from the same company decided to gossip. They blame the fact that Kanda-san is still unmarried at the age of over 30. The man is not at all happy with the fact that he became a random witness to their gossip, the main character of which is himself. It's late at night. Tired, he returns from work and texts with his friend. After learning about what happened, a friend encourages him, sending him words of support. Kanda thinks that he is a loser and it would be better to just go for a part-time job and not plow in an unloved job. A friend assures him that part-time work does not bring enough money to afford their wish list, especially new computer games. He tells Kanda about his new hobby, the retro game 11. Kanda is not yet aware of what this game is and asks if it is football. His friend is outraged by this lack of awareness of the latest innovations in the game industry and describes 11 as a masterpiece with a bunch of beautiful women. Kanda was not at all impressed, as his failures on the personal front turned into a hatred of the entire female sex. He looks thoughtfully at the advertising banner and reflects that any relationship with women inevitably leads to problems. The hero casts a disgruntled glance at the advertising poster, which depicts a happy couple. The traffic light turns green and Kanda continues on his way, thinking about the meaning of life. Kanda stares at his phone, but doesn't notice the car speeding past. Before he could react, he froze in place, like a forest animal startled by the headlights. The driver stops and sees Kanda lying on the ground, bloodied, and flees the scene. In the dead of night, there is no one to help the bleeding Kanda. His broken phone, which is still on, is still being answered by a friend with a dream of being reborn in Eroge or something similar, but the main character will never answer him again. Kanda opens his eyes and remembers what happened to him. Angry, he promises himself to find and jail the failed driver. Yasutaka hears a soft female voice and looks around. He sees a dark-haired maid sitting on the bed in front of him. Thinking that he is in the hospital, he does not understand at all what she is doing here. Kanda doesn't understand who he is or how he got these memories. Now he's in the body of a young blonde boy. The girl informs him that he fell down the stairs and asks him not to get up too abruptly. While rubbing his head, Yasutaka inquires about the whereabouts of the maid who caused his fall. They tell him that although she had no motive, it can be assessed as an attempted murder. Kanda asks to give him something for the pain, but they refuse because they have already administered the medicine. The maid asks permission to ask him something. She asks who he is anyway. Like this, thus shocking Yasutaka. After some tense silence, the guy replies that he is Hawk Gold, and there can be no doubt about it. The maid expresses some disbelief in his words, but the latter assures her that he is still not thinking straight after the injury. The girl still doesn't believe his words, but the hero continues to convince her of his authenticity as Hawk Gold. In the end, Yasutaka gets annoyed and puts and reminds the girl that she is just a servant. She excuses herself and leaves the room. The hero asks her to tell him that he has nothing against the maid who pushed him down the stairs. The guy is left alone and sighs heavily. He really didn't know that he would end up in another world. Suddenly, he hears a knock on the door. The door creaks and someone enters. A small girl looks out from behind the door, confused, and asks about the condition of Yasutaka, who turns out to be her brother. Yasutaka recognizes her as his sister. He hadn't expected her to show up. We learn that Marie is Hawk's sister from another mother who died for unknown reasons. The poor girl was just a reminder of her. Hawk says he's fine, but he's worried that the staff might have noticed Marie. There's a knock. Hawk hides his sister. The door opens and a white-haired old man bursts in. Babbling, he climbs up to hug Hawk and tells him that he's brought him a treat. Hawk recognizes him as his father and replies that he's fine. The father continues to be moved by his son. He insists on contacting him if Hawk needs anything. The guy informs Marie that she can no longer hide. Marie comes out of her hiding place. She informs Hawk about the rumors that are circulating about him. Everyone remembers the guy as an obnoxious, rude bore who was not known for good behavior. The hero assures his sister that he has changed, he is kind to her because he realized the need to behave differently. And then he warns Marie not to take advantage of her brother's kindness. Yasutaka gets out of bed and takes the first tentative steps in his new body. After a little thought, he decides to do a general cleaning. Immediately, his weak body breaks down and he faints. Painful memories scratched into his mind haunt Yasutaka even in his sleep. The guy wakes up in a cold sweat. He looks out the window and remembers being hit by a car. Outside the window was a beautiful landscape. Yasutaka is now a member of the gold merchant family. He lives in a huge mansion in gloss and luxury. There are a huge number of servants in the house, the vast majority of whom have affairs with Hawk's father. First of all, Yasutaka takes preventive measures so that what happened to Hawk does not happen again. He reduces the staff, leaving the most loyal and senior maid Laurier. He manipulates and tearfully asks his father to fire half of the maids. The father indulges his pet. The maids are shocked. There is a ringing silence. Yasutaka doesn't care about his family's reputation at all, since it's already ruined. He has every right to do whatever he wants. The father still worries about the safety of his offspring and suggests that he hire a couple of butlers. The boy is left with no choice and instructs to make an announcement about the recruitment of staff. A few days later, a huge crowd of people who wanted to work gathered at the mansion. Hawk comes out on the porch of the house and announces that he will now choose the right people. The guy looks around the crowd. In front of him is a large number of human beings of different colors. He chooses several suitable candidates and invites them to the house with him. The unelected are outraged that they wasted their time. They loudly express their dissatisfaction with the current situation. Hawk commands Laurier. Laurier, with a threatening look, asks people to leave the territory of the mansion, otherwise they will be forced to use force. This has the right effect on the crowd, and they leave the mansion in a huff. One guy in the crowd accidentally tripped and fell to the ground. Hawk sneers at the unfortunate man, saying that if they are destined, they will meet again. The man walks away confused. Hawk, lists in hand, looks around for the candidates he's chosen. 3 people qualified for the final round: Basil, Olive, and Hibiscus. All of them are given the honor of working in a luxury mansion. The chosen ones look around and marvel at the luxury. Something caught Hibiscus's attention. The heroes enter a room with a richly laid table bursting with a variety of dishes. Hawk invites them to the table, mentioning that he has a lot of lunch meetings planned and that the mercenaries should understand at least a minimum of table etiquette. All 3 agree and sit down to dinner. Having started dinner and tasted the first dish, the heroes are amazed at its delicious taste. Hawk interrupts the meal, saying it's time for the next challenge. Frustrated, the characters get up from the table and follow him. Together, they enter Hawk's office and line up in front of him. The young master announces that Olive and Virgil have been hired. Hibiscus, unfortunately, did not pass the test. This message from Hawk causes a storm of emotions in the girl. She is indignant. The boy explains this by saying that he cannot accept someone who has a face that expresses hatred for the rich. Hibiscus begs to hire her because she has a sick sister and needs money for her treatment. She falls to her knees and promises to do whatever she is told just to get the coveted position. Hawk knows the girl isn't lying. Earlier, he had asked Laurier to find out about her past. It turned out that Hibiscus became an adventurer to help her terminally ill sister. She's the perfect candidate for a character in an anime or novella, which is why Hawk decided that their paths don't match. Thinking before Hibiscus, who is on her knees, the young man realizes that if he refuses now, he will be to blame for the death of her sister. He relents and hires Hibiscus. She doesn't believe his words at first, but the boy insists that he's not the type to lie to people's faces. Hibiscus is grateful, but then the idea comes to her that she was just brought in as a mistress. Hawk introduces Marie to her new bodyguard, Hibiscus. Marie is very embarrassed that she will be accompanied by a personal security guard. She is convinced that she is not worthy of such a thing. Hawk convinces her that this is all to maintain the family's reputation, since the daughter of the Gold family must have at least one escort by status. For himself, he has left 2 muscular guards who now follow closely behind him. Hawk grinned smugly. Badzil asked what was the reason for his smile. The boy, carelessly thinking about something, did not deign to give him a specific answer. Suddenly, the sound of a door opening and a woman's silhouette in the aisle interrupted his train of thought. It was a modestly dressed beauty with glasses who introduced herself as Mint from the Royal Academy. We learn that there are 11 types of magic in this world. Who you are born with decides what magical attributes you have a predisposition to. In Hawk Gold, it's darkness. He asked his father to hire a private teacher who knew this kind of magic, which is exactly what Mint turned out to be. They were sitting across from each other, Mint and Hawk, with 2 bodyguards towering behind them. He was displeased that his teacher was a woman. Mint, meanwhile, is looking around nonchalantly, wondering if Hawk's parents are home right now. He seriously answers her that her father works, but they do not have a mother, so all questions should be asked to him. The girl is surprised that despite his age, Hawk is so independent. They agreed to work together. Olive filed the contract and Mint signed it. Hawk introduces himself to her and they agree to cooperate. The weather is beautiful outside. Mint, Hawk, and both of his bodyguards enter the garden to begin their first lesson. Mint will explain that there are particles in the air of their world called elements. From these elements, mana is obtained, and when passing through the bodies of heroes, it takes on the property of certain attributes that they can use. Mint attributes darkness and wind. Elements work as fuel for magic. When they enter the human body, they are automatically transformed into attributes. Spells change elements in a person's body. Mint casts a spell and Hawk begins to be surrounded by air currents. This brings him to a pleasant surprise. Mint explains that to activate a spell, you need to understand how the trigger for turning elements into mana works. For starters, she suggests practicing the usual 2-word spells. Then the girl takes out a reference book from which she once studied herself. Mint offers to work with Hawk to find out what he wants to learn. She makes him promise that he won't train when no one is around. Sensei warns that at first, Hawk may not be able to cope with magic and get hurt. Olive reassures the young master that he has metal magic and will stop Hawk if something goes wrong. Laughing nervously, Mint expresses his uncertainty that this will be the best solution in such a situation and promises to instruct Olive after this lesson. The young master is willing to pay for an additional briefing. Some time passed. Hawk was trained as a horse rider and was accompanied by his usual bodyguards. Badzil notices that the young man has recently become interested in magical practice and suggests paying more attention to physical activity. Physical training is a pain for Hawk, but the bodyguards continue to convince him of the need for it. The young man retorts that in case of something, he still has his magic, and with it, he will not be lost. Badzil warns that deception and treachery are common among his kind, so he is glad that Hawk trusts them. The boy thinks that even so, hiring the 2 of them was a good idea. Badzil also expresses his pleasure at work. Laurier approaches the trio and announces the arrival of a guest. Hawk is confused when he hears the name Sunny Goldbug. He orders her to wait for him in the waiting room. Laurier leaves and Badzil asks who Hawk was when Mrs. Goldbug was born. The young man replies that Sunny is his fiancée. Mrs. Goldbug is waiting for Hawk in the reception area of the mansion. She came to check on him. She's nervous, the memory of Hawk's past bullying still fresh in her mind. The image of Hawk in her mind is a hooligan and tactless boy from whom you can expect all sorts of nasty things. Hawk enters the room. He is strict and collected, which greatly surprises Sunny. She also notices a change in his character and doesn't recognize him. Sunny Goldbug is the 8-year-old daughter of a noble baron. In exchange for financial support from the Gold family, the baron agreed to marry his daughter to Hawk. Giving your daughter to a rich bastard is a typical solution. She seems to have already figured out what kind of person Hawk is and is disgusted with him, but she has to pretend to enjoy everything. The new Hawk reports that he is alive and well and Sunny can leave if he wants. The girl confusedly says that she brought the young master a gift. She personally grew the flowers and made an aromatic mixture out of them. Hawk accepted the gift and Sunny left. He is not entirely happy with the upcoming wedding, as he is convinced that this will be nothing but problems. He watches her wistfully out of the window and thinks of a way to break off the engagement without a scandal. At first, he decides to return to the old image of a bully, but quickly realizes that in fact, a wedding with a noble lady is his duty as the heir to a noble family. Hawk regrets that he was in another world and does not have any cheating superpowers. Then he has an epiphany and wonders where in this world you can buy slaves. The bodyguards are very surprised to hear this from their master, and they try to dissuade him from this idea. Badzil describes the slave market as a continuous depression with incessant moans and despair in his eyes. The young man is confused by this. Olive clarifies whether the Gold family is engaged in this trade. Many noble families abhor slaves and often avoid dealing with the mournful in order to maintain their status. Badzil is left to keep an eye on the house, while Olive and Hawk go to the slave market. The hubbub of the crowd, the rumble of carts, and the clatter of horses. Suspicious people in raincoats in the corners, their faces hidden by a hood. The heroes walk down an alley between dirty sheds where slaves are sitting. There's a lot of trading going on here. Olive sees the shadow of doubt on Hawk's face. Olive asks the NP if the owner has changed his mind and if he is definitely ready for this show. A few slaves sit sullenly behind bars in the dungeon. Hawk tries to push through other people, but it's hard for him to do so because of his short stature. Suddenly hands grab him and lift him up. It was Olive who lifted the landlord onto his shoulders. That way, Hawk will be able to see everything in detail. The prisoners scowl at him from behind the bars. The salesperson comes up and asks who they have chosen. Hawk asks what the creatures in the dungeon are like. He is told that the captives are rare beastmen, ferocious and savage, but there is nothing to be afraid of as long as they are wearing collars. Hawk buys the largest of them, a tiger-like creature. The cunning salesman asks if Hawk wants to take the girl, but Hawk refuses, saying that he is not looking for slaves for this purpose. Olive doubts that Father Gold will allow the slave to be brought to the mansion, but Hawk assures her that the old man's soft-heartedness will not allow him to say a word against his beloved son. The dungeon opens and a huge tiger man appears in front of them, who introduces himself as Crescent. Hawk informs him that Crescent is now his third guard, but Crescent grins and becomes enraged because he doesn't want to obey the little man. Hawk feels the beast girl's eyes on him, but to him she looks like a slave who would be the main character at the end of the story, and he decides not to buy her. Hawk, Olive, and Crescent return to the mansion. Badzil worked in the stables taking care of the horses. In the past, as an adventurer, he was not satisfied with a quiet life. He wanted adrenaline and exciting adventures. He aggressively asked the guild master to give him a task to kill the dragon, but the guild master refused. For that, the master gave him another job, security guard for the son of the Gold family. He guaranteed good pay for his work. Badzil is angry, but agrees to work. On his way to the Gold family home, he passes by the slave market and feels disgusted. He's afraid he'll end up there one day. Badzil snapped out of his reverie and continued his work. After thinking about it, he decides that Hawk is a pretty honest guy, and maybe the rumors about their family were a lie. Badzil gets into a good mood and discusses how much he can earn on such a job in a year. He begins to regret what he said about the slave market and decides to thank Hawk for the job. Then he sees a huge Crescent standing in front of him and Olive with Hawk on his shoulders. He is surprised that the latter has acquired not a miniature slave, but a broad-shouldered animal man. Hawk says that he is not interested and that Crescent will be his third guard because he was the strongest and most muscular of the other slaves. They both laugh, and Buddy looks at them blankly. He reasons that Hawk's intelligence doesn't match his age at all, so far-fetched is his thinking. Crescent looks back at the horses. Noticing his hungry look, Hawk promises to feed him. The beast man is unhappy because he was not allowed to eat a couple of horses from the stable. Badzil snaps at Crescent not to dare touch his favorite horse, but catches him scowling and jokes that he believes Crescent wouldn't do anything like that. Together, they enter the mansion to bathe the beast man. Crescent is surprised that a man of such high status lets a slave into his bathroom. As they go to the bathroom, Olive remembers her past. When he got the job, he didn't think twice and accepted the offer. Olive's Sogolshians were surprised by his presence. They describe him as a soulless, silent type who is hardly interested in money. Olive himself hadn't expected Hawk to choose him at all. At the same time, the young master takes a hot bath with his bodyguards. Crescent recalls the hot springs in his home village. His homeland was not far from the volcano, so Cramson often swam there. Hawk expresses his desire to visit this place sometime. Olive dissuades the owner, mentioning that as soon as the villagers see their compatriot in the role of a slave, they will immediately kill his master. As they continue to enjoy the hot tub, they exchange jokes like old friends. Crescent says that even though he's a slave, he doesn't feel like one. He calls Hawk weird but smart. Olive likes his master's company. It seems to him that some feelings have reawakened in him. The trio finishes their spa treatments with refreshing drinks. Olive is surprised by the variety of milk presented. Crescent clarifies that Hawk drinks from his own vessel, since his drink has an unnatural color. The young man replies that he just mixed something with fruit juice. He offers Crescent a taste. The expression on the latter's face shows that he doesn't quite like the idea. It confuses him that he is not treated like a slave. Badzil meets the bathed heroes and invites them to the table. Hawk kindly asks the beast man if he has something he doesn't eat. The one who is confused by this question reminds that he is just a slave. Hawk and his subordinates head off to dinner satisfied. In a dark office, the gold company case is being discussed. Unknown people can kill the golds if they become a threat to the kingdom. This task is assigned to a special operative of the secret department of the intelligence unit who unexpectedly turns out to be Laurier, the head maid of the Gold family. Early morning at the mansion. Laurier opens the curtains and lets the sun's rays into the room. She tries to wake up the young master, but he still doesn't want to wake up. The maid describes how delicious the breakfast was prepared by the chef. Hawk is tempted and finally gets out of bed. Laurier brought him some clothes, but Hawk wanted to change himself. She agrees and says that she will wait for him in the dining room. She leaves the room. On the table are laid out the freshest dishes, which the skilled chef diligently prepared all morning. As soon as Hawk arrives at the cafeteria, his father throws a hug at him. While his father is babbling to him, Marie enters the room. She greets everyone present. The head of the family is furious and yells at her to get out of here. This leads the girl to despair, and she is on the verge of crying. Hawk cuts his father off, instructing him that a man who doesn't care about his family will never be respected. The old man objects that since Marie is not his daughter, they do not consider her their family. Hawk urges the father to spend time expressing his love for his son rather than insulting his stepdaughter. After that, the young master catches Marie's grateful gaze. The father, touched, admits that Hawk is right. He was relieved that such a pious boy could easily enter the Royal Academy. Hearing these words, Hawk falls into a prostration, as he did not expect such an outcome of events. Gold SR says that this will help their family become nobles in the future. Hawk isn't happy about having to learn again. He had never thought about schools in this world. Hawk asks Laurier why his father wants him to enter the nobility so badly. The maid replies that everything Father Gold does is for Hawk's benefit. He thinks about it and decides to try something. Laurier was flooded with memories of the time when she first got a job at the Gold House. After starting work, she was horrified by Hawk's harassment and the fact that half of the maids were mistresses of Eagle Gold, the head of the family. Due to the fact that all the smart employees ran away, she was appointed head maid. For a long time, she played the role of a servant for the Golds. But one day, she saw Hawk Gold fall down the stairs. It happened by accident. A new maid accidentally pushed the boy, and he fell down the stairs. Her intention was to kill Eagle and make it look like he'd committed suicide because of her son's death. Only Hawk survived. And not only was he a completely different person, he stopped letting women get close to him and surrounded himself with bodyguards. Suddenly, someone called out to Laurier. It was a young gentleman whom Laurier obligingly asked if he wanted anything. She is only too happy about the fact that he has been reborn into a good person, because killing people is not a pleasant thing. Yasutaka recalls his past. He and a friend play on the computer, and he argues that usually in such games, the main character gets into some absurd situation. But it must have a cheating ability, although not always being able to use it from the very beginning. A friend objects that it is in this game that everything is wrong, and the character has no abilities except for the luck of being born into a rich family. Yasutaka says that if he had a choice, he would like to be reborn rich and not know suffering. Hawk pulls the carriage up to a huge, luxurious building, his face showing surprise. The richly decorated building turns out to be the Royal Academy. Eagle Gold asks if he needs to make a contribution for Hawk to enter the academy without exams. The boy refuses, as he is confident in himself and has a recommendation from Mint Sensei. His father believes in him, and Hawk enters the academy with the rest of the incoming students. The coordinators ask them to go to the specified audience. Hawk admits to himself that he's nervous. Suddenly, a group of people in the aisle catches his attention. Before him appears a young guy who stands before the commission of teachers of this academy. They argue loudly about his abilities. Some claim that he is legendary, able to use extra attribute magic, others that he does not fit any attribute, which means unable. From this conclusion, the young man falls to his knees. Incapable is a sentence for him. Hawk stands in the crowd and still doesn't understand what's going on. The father of the incapable boy is also shocked by this statement. His little sister tries to support the unfortunate man, but she does not succeed. The crowd denounces the fact that the eldest son of Duke Zhe's family was incapable. It makes Hawk angry. The Duke is furious with humanity, calling him a disgrace to the family. Hawk sees through the crowd that the boy's father has grabbed the boy's clothes and is about to hit him. Hawk thinks to himself that this whole situation reminds him of the prologue of a story. Now he will have to suffer for some time until he finds loyal companions, after which he will begin to rise in the eyes of people, start to match the hero. Also, the mysterious atmosphere is created by the fact that the examiners called it the 12th legendary. The word incapable will eventually change to capable of non-attributive magic, and the direction of the story will change dramatically. Basil laughs, but Olive stops him. He is confident that the Duke's son will be the one to change this world. Hawk realized something in that moment. He's not the main character of this world. From now on, Unity will have to go through all the horrors of life, starting with a meeting with a beautiful girl and ending with the story of becoming the only person in the world who can use non-attributive magic. Hawk's role is to be an evil classmate and mock him. For him, this is a story of evil. He must play the role of a weak clown boss as best as possible. There's a slap in the face. Vanity's cheek is grazed from her father's heavy blow. Hawk is grateful that he's not in Unity's shoes. On the way out of the academy, Hawk is greeted by a happy father. He is happy that his son was able to enroll. Eagle says that even if his son was incapable, he would love him just as much. Hawk is afraid that the Duke might hear. Continuing to squeeze his son, Eagle blithely says that if anything happens, he will be able to buy off. It's time to shift the scene. The scene becomes the Royal Academy. Hawk tries his best to call up a status window, inventory, or something similar from the game's stats. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out. The game interface still doesn't appear. His bodyguards are watching and are somewhat confused. Uenishi Zero, who is more likely the main character of this world, was exiled from his family. 2 years have passed since then. Hawk was 10 years old. He believes that the time has finally come to change his life. But unfortunately, a person is not so easy to change. Hawk is used to the life of an outcast. Suddenly, he feels someone approaching. Bully teenagers approach him. They found out that Hawk belongs to the Gold family. Bullies make offensive comments about Hawk. He understands that he has been bullied. The last Hawk in the trail would have told his father everything, but money obviously wouldn't work against them. A group of teenagers continue to insult Hawk with even greater force. Suddenly, the prince and his companion appear behind them. The hooligans recoiled in surprise. The prince reminds us that everyone at the academy is equal, no matter what your background is. The bullies apologize and retreat. We are being introduced to the third prince of the kingdom of Branston Pickles. Next to him is Rose Zero, the younger twin sister of Wanishi Zero. The prince is interested in Hawk's condition. Hawk reports that he is doing well and is grateful for the help. The prince asks for less formalities because he and Hawk are in the same class. Branston asks if he can be Hawk's friend. He, at a loss, agrees. Hawk walks out of the academy. At the entrance, his bodyguards are waiting with a carriage. They are interested in his life and studies. Crescent says threateningly that if anyone offends Hawk, he will make a cutlet out of him. Budzil opens the carriage door and Hawk gets in. He says he wants to stop somewhere on the way. Upon returning to the mansion, Hawk sits down at his desk and begins to think through a plan. The young man remembers Mint's words about charging an item with his mana. He will be able to use the magic of the fire and water attributes. For example, you can create a bow whose arrows ignite themselves or armor that doesn't mind high temperatures. But it's not that simple. To create a high-quality item, you need the appropriate skill. As Mint Sensei explained, even an amateur like Hawk can create something. He draws a magic circle on the paper and places a pebble in the center. Hawk casts a spell and an invisible beam penetrates his hand and the stone. Next, he places the gem in the watchband and gets a new magic artifact. Hawk created an item that removes its existence from other people's minds. In other words, a stealth watch. Hawk smiles smugly. He creeps up quietly behind Crescent. Seeing his fluffy tail, the boy can't help but start to squeeze him, thinking that he is completely invisible thanks to his stealth watch. Crescent notices the young master and demands an explanation. He talks about his new magical artifact, which he has just created. Crescent disappoints the owner, saying that although he has invisibility, his touch is still palpable to others. Hawk is trading on the market. He wants to buy precious stones that can be attached to a wristwatch. An elderly man, a shopkeeper, hands Hawk a suitable version. Suddenly, the young man's gaze falls on a folio lying on the counter. The merchant says he found it when he was cleaning up an old man's inheritance. Since he can't read, he just assumed that the book has value. Hawk decides to buy this mysterious thing. With his new invisibility artifact, Hawk appears at the Royal Academy. A group of his abusers pass by him, but they don't notice him, so the spell works. Hawk grins smugly. However, he meets the prince and his fiancée Rose, who greet him. Hawk is surprised to be discovered. It assumes that the effect of a magic item created by an ordinary person, NP works on people with such outstanding talent for magic. Together, they continue down the corridor, and the prince asks if Rose has learned anything about the use of non-attributive magic. She studied all the books in the library, down to the forbidden ones, but couldn't find the answer in any of them. Hawk recalls that the prince's fiancée, Rose Dizero, is Wanishi Diza's younger sister. She is studying at the Royal Academy as a replacement for her brother. Besides, the third prince is her fiancé. Hawk thinks aloud that information about non-attributive magic is not so easy to find. The same as, for example, about the degenerate 12th attribute, or as it is correctly called, about the null attribute of which, as it were, should not exist. At the mention of the zero attribute, the prince and his fiancée are surprised to ask Hawk to tell them more about it. Hawk asks if members of such noble families should know more about the old story than he does. Rose realizes the error in her theory and realizes that the old contract is exactly what she missed in her research. Hawk is somewhat intimidated by this reaction. The prince explains that at the moment only the newly approved story is distributed. Hawk, still somewhat confused, says that if there is a new story, then it is logical that there is an old one. The prince and his bride exchange glances. They explain that now not even all noble families know about the existence of the new and old versions of history. Hawk realizes that they're trying not to mention the latter. Rose explains that the old story was burned 300 years ago due to the effects of a religious war. So Hawk's awareness of the existence of such a phenomenon tells them a lot. The prince assumes that Hawk is in possession of a copy of a book about an old story. In the royal family, such things are stored in a place where no one but the reigning king can access. Hawk realizes his mistake and denies it. The young man justifies himself that his knowledge of the existence of this phenomenon is not proof of the presence of a book in his possession. He makes an effort to end the conversation and leave. The prince reassures him that Hawk has nothing to fear. As long as he keeps quiet, he won't be in any danger. Rose begs Hawk to tell her everything he knows, as she wants to do everything possible to save her brother. The young man regrets that he did not learn to close his mouth in time. Next, the case takes place in a special room for the royal family of the Academy's dorm. The subordinates of the noble children were waiting outside the doors, 2 maids on the prince's side and Budzil and Crescent on Gold's side. A tense silence reigns between them. A barrier is placed on the room so that no one can find out what is going on inside. You don't have to worry about eavesdropping. Hawk places the folio on the table. The royal couple sees the book for the first time and wonders how it got into Hawk's hands. He says that he bought it in a shopping district at a bargain price. In short, the world once consisted only of emptiness. From this void, light began to appear, from which man was later created. The void is the null attribute. The people who emerged from the light are the ancestors of the Branston Kingdom. That changed everything. Now in the kingdom they believe in one goddess. This goddess created the world, people, attributes, and elements in 3 days. As a result, this faith became a state one. Looking at the monopolism of the newly established story, it is easy to understand that this is all not accidental. Hawk lets the prince borrow the book to study it. The prince refuses because if he takes the book for himself, he will have big problems. Then Rose resolutely takes the book. She would do anything to save her brother. Thus, the book remains with Rose. It's already night. Hawk can finally breathe out. Crescent wonders why Hawk left the room in a bad mood, but Budzil cuts him off, saying it's not tactful to ask such questions. Hawk understands that now the royal couple will not leave him alone. On the other hand, he had managed to form a connection with two of the Academy's most influential students. But the young man's heart is still uneasy. In the midst of his thoughts, Hawk doesn't notice that Crescent's bushy tail is beginning to twitch. He is embarrassed and asks the owner to touch the tail at least when no one sees them. But Hawk continues, so much does he like the beast man's soft tail. The Academy has a lunch break. Unity stands thoughtfully with an apple in her hand. Hawk watches him from around the corner. Unity retreats to a bench and begins to eat. Hawk sits down next to him. They greet each other. They go for casual small talk. Hawk opens his lunch bag and finds a bag of cash and an envelope. Hawk and his bodyguard retire. The action moves to the royal dorm room. Rose begs Hawk to help her brother. He asks what he can do for her. Rose hints to Hawk that she would like to transfer money through him to her brother Unity. So that Rose doesn't get into trouble because of this, she needs the cover and help of the Golds. After Unity was declared incapacitated, he was removed from the family register and kicked out of the house. My mother took offense at my father for this and left the family. She now lives with Unity in the lower part of the city. Except that they were born and raised among the nobles and don't have the necessary skills to survive among the commoners. Rose wants to help her loved ones, but her father and his servants are constantly watching her. That's why she needs someone who has a lot of freedom of action. Hawk counters that if they do this, the gold company will also be followed. The prince promises to help if there are any problems with this. Hawk agrees. All he has to do is convince his father. We're transported to the gold mansion. The young master calls his father for a serious conversation. He promises to explain everything in detail. Hawk explains to his father that Rosa Zero wants to buy cheap jewelry from the Golds at a high price, and he will transfer part of this money to her brother Unity. The young man believes that in the future, the debt of the royal and ducal families will bring great benefits to the Golds. The father agrees that this will be very beneficial for Hawk's future title. Eagle Gold strongly approves of this venture. He warns his son about safety and assures that if anything happens, he will try to solve the problems that have arisen. The old man showers Hawk with praise. He is very proud that his son managed to make connections at the academy so quickly. Delighted, he lifts Hawk up on his arm and continues to squeeze. Eagle strictly warns his son that anyone can get a knife to his back, and he should always remember this. Hawk agrees. He says that if it comes to this, he will take full responsibility, because he does not want to cause problems for the company and his father can kill him as the culprit. This moves the old man to the depths of his soul. He takes Hawk in his arms and says that he will never raise a hand to harm his beloved son. In case of any problems, Eagle has everything ready to escape from the country. He assures his son that there is nothing to worry about. Hawk looks thoughtfully at his reflection in the apple from Unity's lunch. In this life, he wants to properly repay his parents as he treated them badly in the past. Hawk hands the apple to Crescent. He mentally thanks his father for treating him so well and endlessly loves his son. It is said that in this world, in order to become better at attribute magic, it is necessary to come into contact with the elements of this magic more often. So, swimming and meditation under a waterfall develop the attribute of water. Sun baths are an attribute of light. Being in the wind is an attribute of the wind. But then how to develop the attribute of darkness? Hawk is standing in front of Unity and his mother's house. He casts an anti-malice spell and places a barrier on the building. Darkness envelops the building and protects Unity and his mother from unwanted attention. Hawk is pleasantly surprised by his new ability. Lady Zero thanks the young man heartily. Hawk replies that this is the least he can do for them, as Rose is constantly helping him. Meanwhile, Wanishi Zero is training to fight with Crescent with a sword. The bully praises the boy, but that's not enough, and he asks to fight again. Hawk, watching this scene, reflects on Unity's place in this world. Waniti is now living in a slum because he was deemed unfit at the academy. However, apart from the fact that it can't use any attribute, it doesn't have any magic effect on it. It seems that this is its peculiarity. And while they can't get the effect of healing magic or any other useful magic, no amount of magic can harm them. Being able to pay for natural magic makes Humanity's situation quite lucrative. Everyday life in the lower ranks will be a lesson for him, and Unity will become many times stronger. Suddenly, during a practice fight with Crescent, Unity's sword flies out of her hand. Tiger asks him if he is tired already. Unity resolutely replies that he is ready to train to the last to protect his mother. Crescent and the rest of the bodyguards explain to the owner that Wanishizero asked him to train. The trio asks Hawk's permission to do so. He decides that there is no reason to refuse. Waniti started his training, and he became very close to Hawk's bodyguards. Because of this, the young man began to feel somewhat abandoned. She begins to envy Unity. He always hated those who were lucky with face or talents. He was reborn in this world as a child of a rich family, and because of this, he began to forget the old self. Even if Unity didn't have any malicious motive, Hawk still felt an inexplicable jealousy for his attention. He recalls his past where he could not achieve anything. Negative thoughts begin to come to the young man's mind. That hiring a guard for money, buying a slave, and playing friends with them was a bad decision. He reasons that it will still be excruciatingly painful to part with them. What about Basil? What about Olive? What about Crescent? Hawk believes that if they suddenly realize that he is a good-for-nothing, worthless person, then they will not be hurt to part with him. Olive notices the owner's scowl. He calls out to the young man, asking why he is so sad. He replies that everything is fine with him. Hawk believes that very soon Olive will go to the main character, and the boy will no longer be needed. Gold's similar mood allows the darkness from the air to enter his body, which strengthens his connection with the darkness. Darkness fills him from the inside out, which means he'll have to learn to live with it. Hawk dreams that One-kun will use his non-attributive magic to purge his soul of darkness, since he will never become the main character anyway. The young man believes that he is a freak both outside and inside. Carefree childhood is over, it's time to grow up and meet reality. Now he is a member of a rich family, and this life is already better than the last, and it is worth living to the fullest. Crescent is happily scratching his neck, which is now free of the collar. Badzil asks him why he took it off. Then it becomes clear that Crescent was released by Hawk. When it happened, Crescent was in shock. He asked the owner if he was sure that the tiger would not cut his throat while he was sleeping. Hawk replies that he no longer sees the point of forcing KRJ-san to obey by leaning on the collar. Hawk leaves Tiger baffled. He and Budzil are discussing the situation in the stable, but Olive interrupts them because the owner has something to do. Hawk, Crescent, and Olive are standing in front of the church. They are met by a local priest who says that he has heard a lot about the Gold family. The man introduces himself as the head of the teaching department of the goddess of Branston Kingdom, one of her 13 apostles, Hamsgotsk. Hawk informs him that he wants to discuss a money issue with him. The priest is very happy about this and invites the heroes inside. They walk down long corridors to the back of the church. In the conference room, Hawk decides to get straight to the point. He says that starting today, his family is going to donate 7 gold pieces a month to the church, 5 of which will need to be spent on distributing food. He asks not to mention the name Gold if there are any questions. If Hams keeps quiet, he will receive 5 gold coins a month. The priest was interested in such a proposal. After some consideration, he agrees to the deal. But he does not specify whether this is somehow connected with the Duke's family. Hams is worried that it may look suspicious and the royal family or the police may have questions. Hawk doesn't deign to answer and insists on making the deal. Crescent is also mentioned. With his heavy gaze, he heightens the atmosphere of tension in the room. The priest sells out and agrees. Hawk hands Tom the contract and mentions that it has dark magic applied to it. If one of the parties violates its terms, it will pay with its life. Hamza is annoyed by Hawk's overconfidence. The young man, seeing the priest's confusion, goes all in. He mentions that in the course on old history meant his family can easily repeat the religious war of 3 years ago. Hawk throws up his hands and reminds me that this is just an ordinary mutually beneficial deal. The priest is outraged by this confidence of the boy, but realizing that he has no choice, signs the contract. A pleased Hawk mentions that he is not a coward, that he hits from behind and does not try to deceive him. After that, the young man explains the circumstances under which the transfer of money will be made and is removed. An exasperated Hams wishes with all his heart that the heroes would leave as soon as possible because he wholeheartedly hates such louts. Hawk and his friends invite him to come together as comrades who hate someone, one women, the other men. The evil priest already proceeds to threaten to use his magic on Hawk, and he and his companions are removed. The Gold Mansion. Budzil meets his friends. Noticing the owner's drooping face, he wonders what's bothering him after all. Instead of answering, Hawk asks where Laurier is. Badzil replies that he saw her in the kitchen recently. The bodyguard asks if Hawk has visited Unity. He says there's something about him. The boy is trying so hard that I want to support him. The young master advises Badzil to visit Unity as well. Badzil remains a little discouraged by Hawk's condition. The young man goes through the long corridors to Laurier. She greets him, and Hawk says that her information helped him a lot. The maid doesn't know what he's talking about. The young master hints that he knows about her double life. Laurier is surprised that he isn't going to kick her out, but Hawk says that as long as she performs well as a maid, he has no complaints about her. The young man mentions that she can leave at any time if she wants to. He asks me to bring something warm to drink in his room. At the door of his room, the owner is waiting for his loyal bodyguards. They want to play a game of shogi with him. Hawk doesn't have a face, so he tells them to play without him because he's tired. He suggests that they go on vacation or do something they like. Hawk casually sheds his clothes and falls onto the bed. In frustrated feelings, he begins to turn to darkness. He asks that the darkness swallow up all his pathetic cowardly sides, all his lingering and unpleasant feelings, so that he will not meet them anywhere else. Beautiful fresh morning. Yuanishizo washes her face with water from the well. He looks at his reflection in the cool water and remembers with sadness that he was once the eldest son of a duke. Mentally, he is transported back 2 years. He recalls that fateful day when he was declared unfit at the Royal Academy. His own father shouts at him, calling him a bastard and a disgrace to the family. Rosa Zero begs her father to stop. Unity didn't know what was going on at the time. At home, the father repeatedly humiliated his son, calling him a jerk, unworthy of wasting his time. He kicked Wanishi out of the house, forbidding him to call himself Zero from now on. The boy's mother was alarmed. She tried to persuade her father not to kick him out of the house. Then he put them out on the street together. The whole city found out about this case. Everyone he considered friends turned against him and started bullying him. The food that Wanidi had received for nothing was now a challenge for him. He realized that he had been an ungrateful, spoiled brat all along. However, there was a ray of hope for him. His sister Rose and Prince Pickles did not abandon him. Like Hawk, of course, someone who specifically came to Unity in the slums to help. For some reason, he is very kind to him and his mother, even though they are no longer part of the ducal family. Hawk also brought medicine and allowed him to train with his guards. He's put a barrier around Unity's house, and he's the one who gives them Rose's letters and money. Hawk had come to visit Unity. He suggests that he understand non-attributive magic better, since just because he was called incapable at the academy doesn't mean that he can't use any kind of magic. Hawk cheers Unity up by reminding him that he's his own boss. The young man reminds him that thinking about the future is a healthier approach than regretting the past. Unity is once again convinced that Rose, Prince Pickles, and Hawk are his true companions. Unity and Crescent begin their training session. Tiger teaches him not to think about anything superfluous. Suddenly, Unity falls and injures her leg. Crescent freaks out because he thinks Deal has overdone it. Wanidi convinces him that everything is fine and he can continue the fight. Hawk stops his companion and Crescent apologizes to him. Hawk argues that without a single scratch, the body cannot be hardened, but through an open wound can get bacteria or other infection. He reminds Unity that magic doesn't work for him and that he should be more alert to illnesses and injuries. Crescent worries that if something happens to the boy, Rose will not leave a wet spot from him. The two boys enter Zero's house together. As soon as her mother sees Wanidi's leg scratched, she gets very scared. He reassures her that it's just a scratch. Hawk envies Wanidi in a nice way. Isn't it enough to be happy to have such a loving mother? He sends the latter to wash the wound with water. While Unity is busy treating the wound, he discusses Hawk's intentions towards him. If you think it's doing all this to gain Wanidi's trust when he becomes a duke again, it's a pretty low price to pay. Unity thinks for Hawk that he is doing this solely for the sake of profit. Unity wants to get stronger. He wants to be someone who will help others. But he won't flaunt his strength and kindness. He will become their personification, what Hawk is to him now. He needs to work hard to earn the right to call him his friend. One aspires to become someone that his friends won't be ashamed of. Rose, Prince Pickles, and Hawk talk over a cup of tea in the Royal Academy dorm. Rose speculates that her brother may have void magic, also known as non-attribute magic. The prince finds the detailed history of the Dia family extremely suspicious, as there are too many coincidences. Hawk knows that this phenomenon is usually called fate. The prince uses this word to describe his meeting with Hawk. Gold denies that he is not usually blessed with such a thing as fate. Pickles jokes that Hawk always says nasty things about himself. The prince has heard about the bad reputation of the gold trading company, and people often say that her receiver is a stupid, narcissistic obscenity. Even though he thought the rumors were silly slanders, the prince understood that a father who indulged his child excessively would only raise a spoiled child, which is why he was very surprised when he saw Hawk. An unremarkable, unassuming guy. It was as if he was deliberately letting others humiliate him. Pickles seemed to see himself in him. As the third prince of this country, ever since he was a child, he had seen beautiful and cruel things and met quite a few similar people. Maybe that's why he came to his rescue, even though no one asked him to. Hawk emphasizes how much he appreciates the honor of being friends with the prince. But he mentions that he would really appreciate it if the prince didn't say such things to us in public, thus putting him in a difficult position. Pickles laughs, saying that he is very happy to be friends with Hawk. Meanwhile, Rose believes that this commoner is not worthy of friendship with the prince. While her brother was published from the family, Hawk entered Class Ep and was able to make friends with members of the royal family. She feels that this was extremely unfair to Unity. After hearing the rumors about Hawk, she began to think that he was a vulgar and narcissistic womanizer. But if you ignore the labels given to him, then Hawk becomes an extremely unique and interesting person. Hawk got Rose interested in the 0-point stories. Slowly stirring her tea, Rose pondered about void magic. Hawk was looking at her from a point of view that hadn't even occurred to her. Rose had never thought about this simple and logical thing. She wonders what the world looks like in Hawk's eyes. Rose remembers how Hawk helped her out and helped her solve the situation with Unity. Hawk Gold, he was a surprisingly warm and caring person, which exceeded her expectations. Rose is now beginning to understand why Mr. Pickles is interested in him. In the end, Rose says that she is very happy that they have developed such a friendly relationship, but it's time to move on to discussing void magic. Hawk says that he has some idea. He voices that the void is traveling, but he is not yet sure of its true nature. The royal couple is shocked by this statement. Hawk suggests that it is precisely because of the lack of another element that the void must exist inside Mr. The prince and Rose agree with him. Then Hawk explains that in order to develop your element, you need to find something close to it in nature. Mr. Toswan says that he has no predisposition to magic, so he trains his body to be able to fight further without it. And yet, if he believes that his element is useless, then to some extent he will train this very element. The prince is very surprised by this crazy theory. Hawk picks up a bagel. A bagel hole can't exist if the bagel itself isn't there. As he continues to reason, he develops the bagel into pieces. So he clearly shows that dividing it into two halves, the dough inside the bagel disappears. My friends laugh. An offer comes in, end the meeting, and break it up. Then Hawk hands Rose a self-stitched book. Its title reads, "The Reason Why the Unworthy Are Called Such." The young man explains that the book contains his own reflections on the potential of holders of void magic. The prince thoughtfully notes that it is dangerous to have something like this on your hands when the teachings of the goddess are the state religion of the Branston Kingdom. To which Hawk replies that this document contains his thoughts on why Mr. One can't use magic and how special void magic is in terms of elements. Rose asks Hawk to release his thoughts. He turns out saying that he is too simple-minded for such statements, so she thinks it's best for Rose to do it and mention the prince in the special thanks column. Rose deduces that with these documents, they will be able to help her brother. However, there was still something he didn't know back then. That an article written by him, like a small stone thrown into the sea, caused a raging wave to appear. In doing so, Hawk put everyone at risk. Special agents, including Laurier, were assigned to get rid of them. Laurier feels doubtful about this. Further events unfold in the Guild of Scientists. They read Hawk's article and were also inspired by his ideas. The scientists decide to contact Rosa Zero immediately. Hawk is standing in front of the entrance to the academy, but suddenly the royal couple is plastering him. Before him appear the prince and Rose, on the face of which confusion is read. In upset feelings, she turns to the young man for advice. He interrupts her as he is afraid of unnecessary eyes and ears. The trio heads to the royal dorm room of the academy. A powerful barrier is set up on it so no one will eavesdrop on them. The reason why the unworthy are called such. This was a common article that described thoughts about the essence of the unworthy. It was published under the name of Mrs. That Rose, but it was really just Hawk's theories and guesses. In this way, he wanted to thank Rose and the prince, but the Guild of Scientists and the Guild of Magicians, who were interested in him, suggested that Rose take the exams as an external student and go to university. Hawk asks if it would be better for Rose to give up on this idea. She counters that this is a great opportunity for her brother to gain universal recognition. And if she missed this chance, there was no telling when Rose would be able to help Unity again. The prince reminds her that she has not yet understood the content of this article. Hawk warns her that if she makes even one mistake, people who don't like the void theory will be able to take advantage of the oversight to permanently deprive her of her right to vote. And no one knows what terrible consequences this can lead to. Rose agrees with this statement. All that remains is to decline the offer, which is the easiest way if they want to avoid trouble. Failures affect the status of such high-ranking individuals much more than success. Hawk believes that this plan was initially doomed to fail in a country where the belief in the goddess is so strong. Rose sadly agrees and suggests that she will have to tell everyone that the author of the article is Mr. Damas Hawk. Suddenly, the heroes hear a voice coming from somewhere. They turn around. An elderly man in a black raincoat is standing on a hike. The heroes recognize the headmaster of the Royal Academy, Merlin, in the capital. Hawk is horrified to realize that the headmaster has heard all of this conversation. He assures that the heroes have absolutely nothing to worry about, and he just wants to help them. Prince Na understands how Merlin is going to enter the room because it is protected by a magical barrier. He replies that all the barriers in the academy were erected by him, while leaving a couple of loopholes in them. He assures the characters that he will definitely keep their secret, as he himself may get for it. Hawk knows that the headmaster is aware of everything that is being discussed in this room, mentally telling him that he is smart enough. He stares at the young man and thanks him for his praise. Hawk is shocked that the old man can read his mind. Merlin explains that if his students are in trouble, he allows himself to see their thoughts and memories, and he does it not out of malice. The headmaster says that Hawk's face already had it all written on it. The young man realizes that if this old man can view his memories, then he can see fragments from his past life, and he must avoid this at all costs. He is a man from faraway places, trapped in the body of a boy, someone who knows things that are foreign to this world. If people discovered his secret, they would probably torture him for the wisdom of the other world. It would be best to keep the fact that Hawk is the author of the article a secret. Lady Rose only needs to decline the guild's invitation, that's all. Hawk thinks the headmaster has a plan, and he's sure of one thing. Whatever the director is up to, it's not going to end well. Merlin interrupts his reasoning and says that he is not going to punish the guys. He suggests that Hawk accept an invitation to the university instead of Rose. Hawk has an epiphany. He thought so. According to the director, the members of the Scientists Guild are science mad. Therefore, they do not attach importance to the origin of a person until he understands the topic under discussion. Judging by the detailed speech, the director was preparing to transfer some of them to the university from the very beginning. He had everything covered and made an announcement of Hawk's article. After a high-profile presentation, the latter clarifies whether the director understands that the recognition of this work may lead to problems with the church or the royal family. Merlin replies that he is not only a magician, but also a researcher, and he does not like that religion interferes with progress. He also mentions that the upper circles of the Scholar Guild are full of people who wash themselves with poison when it comes to the royal family and the church, and that this is a great opportunity for Hawk Gold. Rose doesn't like hearing such things said about the royal family. The prince says that he understands Rose's feelings, and the director is now quite bold. The headmaster chuckled at the young mages. As a result, Hawk agrees to continue to go to university. Come to think of it, this really isn't a bad opportunity for him. Exploring the void element will definitely bring happiness to the Zero family. In addition, success in the Scholar Guild will help his family raise their profile. And then maybe Hawk can cancel his engagement to Sunny. He made the principle of Sons of Piety, so he didn't say anything to his father when he insisted on the wedding. He just needs to get 1 or 2 university degrees to avoid getting married. Gold informs his father that he has been transferred as an external student. Eagle is absolutely thrilled with this statement. He picks up Hawk and tells him how proud he is of him. Eagle Gold even offers to host a banquet for the occasion, so that everyone can see the abilities of his dear son. Hawk doubts this decision is right, as it will draw too much attention to their family. He says that if his father is so eager to show off his progress, it's worth focusing on one thing. For example, to say that externship for gold is a common thing, and there is nothing to brag about. Eagle is thrilled with the idea and continues to hug her son. Happy laughter can be heard in the mansion. The head of the Mages Guild, the head of the Merchants Guild, and the head of the Scholars Guild welcome Hawk to the university. Eagle Gold asks them to take care of their son and accept his modest gift, which turns out to be money. The head of the Merchant Guild warns that this is not the best situation to present money. But the head of the Guild of Scientists does not mind accepting the gift, since they always do not have enough money for research. He also asks Hawk to share his point of view about the void element. Since it is forbidden to discuss this element in their country, no one conducts research related to this topic, and the appearance of such a young talent as Hawk can completely change people's ideas about magic. The head of the Mages Guild agrees, saying that there is also a heated discussion among his colleagues about his work. The Academy director notices Hawk's popularity. Eagle taps her spoon on her glass to make a grand speech. He wants to express his gratitude for the kind words about his son, and on this occasion present a modest gift on behalf of the Gold Trading Company. Everyone is happy to accept the money, except for the director. The Academy's rules forbid him to take money from the students' parents. In this case, Eagle promises to increase his donations to the Academy so that they will continue to look after his son. The guests unanimously agree with this suggestion, as the director clearly deserved it for helping Hawk with the externship. The head of the Mage Guild is surprised that the cold-blooded demon Eagle Gold is actually such a caring dad. The head of the Guild of Scientists gladly accepts the gift, as with its help he hopes to eliminate obstacles on the way to knowledge. His opponent obviously did not like such a pretentious speech. Out of boredom, Hawk is lost in his own thoughts, as he still can't say a word across these big shots. The young man understands that if he stays too far away from the Academy, his communication with the prince and his fiancée will practically come to naught, and then he will cease to be their errand boy. Using his mind-reading ability, the director responds that Hawk is a problem guy. He asks you not to go into his head again, because every time he is terribly frightened by this. Merlin says that if he keeps walking around with that scowl on his face, there's no way he'll make any friends at the university. It turns out that Hawk had previously placed a mental barrier on himself, but his magic couldn't stop the country's greatest sage. In addition, he believes that he does not need friends because he is a 10-year-old child who entered the university as an external student. Hawk thinks that he will not be accepted by local students, and the only thing that awaits him is ridicule and bullying. Here is 11-year-old Hawk Gold, a first-year student at Queen's University. He enters the classroom, introduces himself, and announces that he will be studying with them starting today. Students are pleasantly surprised that such a young and brilliant student will study with them in the same group. But Hawk was up to something. Holding his hands behind his back, he makes a certain incantation with a gesture. Suddenly, the faces of his classmates change, and they start to mock and despise him. Hawk had been counting on that much. The young master sits dejectedly in the audience, all by himself. The director sits down next to him and asks how he is doing. He scowls and says that in order to find out the answer to this question, it's enough to look around. The principal sees that the students are already huddled together and sitting on the other side of the classroom from Hawk. It turned out that they found a spell on the young man to hide his presence. Their eyes are clouded by a veil of prejudice, so it's easier for them to forget about Hawk altogether. The director condemns the guys for this. Hawk frowns and wonders why the headmaster won't tell them in person. Then he changes his mind, retracting his words, otherwise everyone will consider him a favorite of the director. He calms him down, saying that Hawk is still smart beyond his years. It's lunchtime at the university. Hawk eats alone on the bench. Suddenly, a tall, tanned guy greets him. He asks permission to join Gold. The tanned hunk introduces himself as Rutabaga. We learn that Rutabaga Branston, the second prince of the Kingdom of Branston, is the brother of Prince Pickles. Rutabaga asks how Hawk's morning lecture went, and if he doesn't understand something, then feel free to contact him. Hawk absolutely doesn't understand why the prince pays so much attention to a commoner like him. Rutabaga tells him that anyone will be interested in Hawk, since he is a brilliant child who entered the Royal Academy as an external student. Fate has brought them together so well, and Hawk continues to hide from people and sit alone. Hawk asks the prince to step aside from him as he doesn't want any more problems with the others because of his attitude towards the young man. Rutabaga replies that even members of the royal family speak well of Hawk. He advises Hawk to face reality and acknowledge his own exclusivity. The young man even felt a little offended by such words. The prince laughs because Hawk is an unusual guy, which is why he likes him. The latter does not like such gratuitous praise. Rutabaga hands Hawk a tennis racket and invites him to play. The latter frowns as he is absolutely not in the mood to play tennis right now. Imaginary answer options appear in front of him, and all of them are connected with the refusal of the game. In the end, Hawk still chooses the option to play with the prince. The boys followed her to the tennis court. Crowds of female Rutabaga fans gathered around the chain-link fence. The prince shines as always. On the opposite side of the net is Hawk, who is up to something. Rutabaga serves. The ball flies past Hawk's head, but he deliberately misses the shot. They get stuck making small talk. The prince asks what Hawk thinks of the students at the academy. The young man retorts that it is impolite of him to evaluate others, being a commoner. Rutabaga disagrees. It seems to him that the ignorant is the knowing, which deprives the commoners of the right to vote. Hawk also misses the second shot. He doesn't even bother to pick up his racket to pass the ball. The guy thinks Rutabaga, Mr. Pickles and Messrs. Rose expect too much from him. Hawk finds this odd, as he thinks there are people who end up being much more interesting than he is. The prince replies that the noble's way of thinking is to use others without a second thought. We are all someone's tool from birth. That is why the prince unwittingly became interested in a man who is not afraid of his interlocutor, but at the same time respects him. Hawk doesn't think he's that good of a person. At least it is pleasant to Rutabaga, and that is enough. The bell rings. Break's over, it's time to get back to class. The prince leaves the field and Hawk is left alone. The action moves to the lab. One of the scientists cannot verify Hawk's words that the essence of the void element is not only to change the information of the element inside the human body, but also to neutralize it and then redirect the direction given to it. Hawk thinks it's just a theory. In addition to fire and water magic, the guy named one also has no healing magic. It just doesn't have any effect. Emily would have an element that was converted to a specific attribute by the casters, a tender simply overwritten by the void element. It would be strange if the recovery effect itself didn't transform into void element recovery magic. Conversely, if only the restore command was considered invalid, then where does the magic used on the body disappear? Scientists are just thrilled with this assumption. Hawk adds that the magic they use is activated by transporting elements through the human body, giving different properties to each person's body as well as applying certain commands. Then the guild members understand that if the essence of magic is the commands given when using spells, then attributes are nothing more than convenient names to better represent the capabilities of magic. Everyone unanimously agrees that this discovery will turn the world upside down. They might even be able to implement ideas like dark or fire attribute restoration magic, but this can only be done through unconventional methods. They are excited to discuss the possibility of continuing their research. If scientists can systematize a theory that was previously considered unambiguous, then they can make a significant paradigm shift. Hawk gets the idea of transforming the void element, but he's not sure if he's not wrong. Ice magic can take the place of water magic, so you can increase the power of spells to one degree or another. But the element itself doesn't have any attribute, so people add it, and that can only mean one thing. The scientists applaud Hawk. The guild leader praises the boy heartily. He doesn't regret his decision to take him under his wing. Even late at night, Hawk continues to work on his research. He can't relax if he wants to avoid an arranged marriage. He also has to help the Zero family. Someone knocks on the door of his room. The young man inserts to open, but his legs can't stand it, and he faints. The last thing he sees before he finally passes out is the silhouette of Crescent standing in the doorway. Hawk woke up in the hospital. Crescent is sitting on the bed next to him, looking terrified. Gold tries to laugh it off, but it doesn't work and Tiger counts him out. Hawk asks if he told his father about this, since if Eagle finds out that his son collapsed from fatigue, he will lock him in the room forever. Crescent, like a loyal companion, promised to remain silent. Hawk apologizes for making everyone worry, saying that he's already rested and ready to go back to school. He tries to stand up, but his legs won't hold him up at all. Crescent grabs the boy, saving him from falling. He sincerely asks the owner if they have done something wrong in front of him. Hawk says that on the contrary, it seems to him that he is guilty in front of them. The tiger bodyguard is bursting with a variety of feelings. Annoyed that he didn't get an answer, he lightly smacks the owner on the head. Crescent says that his patience has run out, and he is not as gentle as the rest of the bodyguards. Gold still doesn't understand what happened. Suddenly, in a fit of emotion, the tiger grabs the young master by the throat and throws him onto the bed. Crescent shouts that Hawk has stopped doing anything with them, swimming, eating, playing, laughing. He feels like Hawk has abruptly emptied out. The tiger demands an answer. He doesn't understand why the master has become estranged from his companions. All Hawk can think about is unity and his training with the bodyguards. Crescent is ready to apologize for what he did, whatever it was. Hawk looks into Crescent's eyes and sees resentment and incomprehension. Still working on Hawk, Tiger apologizes several times. At this point, Olive enters the room. Olive can only think of one thing. Crescent tried to kill Hawk. The young master had not seen his subordinate for so long that he had forgotten what he looked like. Olive is afraid of this and suggests calling a doctor. Hawk assures me that everything is fine. A tear rolls down his face. Crescent notices this and gently wipes it off. It becomes clear that the guys care very much about their master and are very worried about him. Hawk came to visit Wanishi Zero and his mother. He tells them the latest news. Hawk hadn't had much contact with Rose since entering university, so he was a little late with a letter for Unity. One notices Hawk's cheerful expression. Meanwhile, something very bad is being prepared. From the window of a nearby building, a hitman aimed a crossbow at Unity's mother. The trigger is pulled, but the arrow does not reach its target, and it bounces off the magic barrier around the house. Before the boys fully comprehend the situation, Crescent and Olive are ready to defend themselves. Tiger spots the killer in the window and throws his blades at the target. The blades fly past, hitting the pole next to the victim's head. From a powerful throw of Crescent, the building completely collapses. The killer, once under the rubble, sees the silhouette of an angry tiger in front of him. Crescent grabs her and ties her up. The characters ponder what they should do with the would-be killer. Crescent suggests simply killing her since he doesn't know how to torture at all. One can't explain why the killer was targeting his mom in particular. Hawk then assumes that the Duke hired the killer. He starts looking through her memories with magic. In flashbacks, he sees the Assassin's Guild, which boosts him to shock. He didn't know there was such a thing here. The killer's goal was to eliminate Juan and his mother, but the reason was unknown. One doesn't understand why his father would do that. Hawk begins to think. He suggests that Rose tried to smuggle Unity back home, and Prince Pickles helped her in this, which angered the Duke. An article about the element of emptiness and a conversation about externship only made the situation worse. Research on the void element had accelerated greatly, so the Duke could no longer sit idly by. Hawk guesses that the attempt to win back Unisha led to the Duke's attempt to influence it with the help of the church, but they refused him. This, of course, makes sense, but there are a lot of inconsistencies in this theory. Hawk has an epiphany and instructs Crescent to take one and his mother to Mississippi Rose and Olive to return home with him. Just for a moment, Hawk saw Laurier in the assassin's mind. Meanwhile, Laurier is walking steadily through the mansion with a dagger in his hand. Hawk and Olive finally made it to Gold Manor. There they meet Badzil and ask him where Laurier is at the moment. He doesn't know this and mentions that he hasn't seen her for a long time. Hawk is starting to think they're already too late. He explains to Badzil that someone hired the Assassin's Guild to kill one and his mother. The young master asks him to look after Eagle Gold and the captured assassin. Oliver received a team to track Laurier by smell. With his master on his shoulders, he rushed to carry out the order. Along the way, they meet Crescent, who has just returned from the academy. Rose asked me to thank Hawk for saving one and his mother. Olive shouts that she found Laurier. Olive leads her companions to Duke Zero's mansion. The trio heads to the entrance of the building, but their path is blocked by 4 assassin girls from the guild. Crescent sends Master and Olive ahead, saying that he will cover for them. He expected to defend himself with Olive's pistol, but it was too small for his powerful paws. Then Tiger decides to fight hand to hand, and Hawk calls out not to spare the killers. The bodyguard is enthusiastic for a fight. Olive and Hawk run away. Hawk's killer girls started to run after them, but Crescent got in their way. The assassins want to take him down with 4 of them and attack the tiger. But he is faster than the girls and easily deals with them. Meanwhile, Hawk and Olive run to the entrance of the mansion. They see ice on the walls and pillars of the building, which leads them astray. Suddenly, Olive notices something out of the corner of her eye. What Olive noticed was the glare from the metal arrowheads of the crossbow. He is tensely waiting for the development of events, hiding behind a pillar and considering a plan of action. While the bodyguard ponders, he shields Hawk from danger with his body. Olive spots the stairs to the main hall to his right and promises to cover Hawk as he runs toward the building. The young man worries about Olive, but he assures him that everything will be fine in him, and soon he catches up with the owner. Hawk takes off abruptly and heads for the stairs. The sniper notices his movement, takes aim, and fires a shot. The arrow almost hits the boy, but an ice mirror created by an unknown person appears in its path. The sniper is lost and hesitates in bewilderment, not understanding what to do next. Olive takes advantage of this moment and shoots her with 2 guns at once. He misses, but the sniper has already fallen and is effectively defused. Then the rest of her group begins to act decisively, but Olive is ready to fight to the last. Meanwhile, Hawk has already reached the stairs and is hurrying along the corridor. In one of the rooms, he notices Laurier. He calls out to the former maid and meets her gaze. Laurier turns around, and behind her, Hawk sees Duke Zero chained to the wall by magic blocks of ice. Laurier was apparently expecting him. The Duke notices Gold and blames him for the fact that Zero had to resort to such measures. Laurier replies that the Duke should pay for the murder of his wife and son, since this is the principles of her work. The Duke orders Laurier to shut up. She's not going to listen to him and orders Ice to close his lips. A block of ice covers the Duke's mouth. Hawk offers to talk to Laurier, but she says they have nothing to talk about. The young man exclaims that she could have killed the Duke before his arrival, but for some reason did not do it, and if something is eating her, she can safely trust him. Hawk comes clean with her about how for a long time he felt depressed because of the fear of other people. These feelings drove him into a corner, but in reality nothing terrible happened. He realized this because of them, Laurier, his bodyguards, and Hibiscus. That's why Hawk wants to talk to her. He wants to know why she does it and what drives her. To which Laurier replies that he has become a worthy man and drops the ice blade from his hand. The maid agrees to speak frankly with the owner, but he asks her to melt the ice on the Duke's head first. As a result, it turned out that the queen was behind everything. She was a clear follower of the teachings of the goddess and did not take a soul off in her only home. At the same time, she hated the children of the other concubines, especially Prince Rutabaga and Prince Pickles. She had already heard the testimony on their lives several times. She also hated Duke Zero, whose daughter had become the 3rd prince's bride. At one point, he tried to win back Her Majesty's trust. It was around this time that his son Juaniti was discovered to possess the void element. People began to spread rumors that the Duke's heir had the worst magic possible. The queen wasn't interested in the Duke's honor, but she couldn't accept the fact that his son possessed the void element, which was contrary to the goddess teachings. She decided to blackmail the Duke, so she ordered to prove her loyalty by killing her own son. In other words, he banished his wife and son to protect them from the queen. He pretended to be furious and stripped them of their noble status. The Duke thought that after such a ruckus, Her Majesty would give up trying to kill his son. The Duke was very lucky that Rose began to actively oppose his decision. The more she suffered her father, the more people around her believed that he really hated his wife and son. Hawk understands that by publishing his article, he greatly aggravated the situation. Because of this, scientists began to study the void element in depth, so the enraged queen decided to continue everything once and for all. She set up a secret squad called Under 3 and hired a guild of assassins through Zero. But Laurier betrayed the queen. She begged Her Majesty to spare the Gold family's life in exchange for killing all of the Duke's family members. But the queen didn't do her word. Laurier wasn't sure if she should really kill the Duke, and then our heroes arrived. Hawk asks why Laurier even wanted to make this deal with the queen if she hated the Gold family. She replies that she did at first, at least 3 years ago. But things had started to change since Hawk fell down the stairs. Laurier involuntarily begins to remember all the good moments that she associates with Hawk, his care and warm attitude. All her life, she was just a tool and a murder weapon in the hands of other people. Hawk made her feel like a real person, which she is eternally grateful for. The Duke sighs resignedly that they're all dead now anyway. The former maid resolutely declares that she is even ready to sacrifice her life for the sake of killing the queen. Hawk insists that you should not immediately go to extreme measures and suggests that together we think about what can be done to avoid the wrath of the queen. Loria reminds her that this is not an easy thing to do and she doesn't understand what can be done in this case. The young man declares with aplomb that they will win with courage, friendship, affection, and the power of money and connections. A lot has happened since that day. For example, in the course of an accident, the queen fell down the stairs. She bruised her head so badly that she fell into a coma. Without someone to give the orders, the Under 3 squad was no longer active. Apparently, the Duke had had a good talk with the head of the goddess teaching department and increased funding for the church, which was why Wan's situation was seen as one big misunderstanding. As for the Void Manga research, it was officially frozen, but secretly continued under the guidance of the academy head. After announcing this, Wan continued to live as a commoner. Rose disagreed with this decision, but eventually accepted it. As far as he knows, she often comes to visit her brother. My father was deeply moved by the fact that due to Hawk's actions, Duke Zero owed him a huge debt. But at the same time, he was extremely angry, so he decided to send all those who supported the first prince to economic hell. In addition, Laurier continued to work for the Gold family as a head maid. As for Hawk, he came to the hot springs to celebrate the management of the connection between parts of Gold and Zero. Heroes relax in hot healing water. Crescent praises Hawk for his work. Finally, everyone was able to exhale and relax. Duke Zero joins Hawk and dives into the water beside him. He expresses great gratitude to the young man, but he is embarrassed and says that he did it only because he wanted to get rid of the threat in the person of the queen. Duke repeatedly thanks Hawk, but Eagle Gold is already calling him to swim together. Everyone is happy and Badzil emphasizes that nothing is more important than family. Hawk agrees and goes to his father.